Hi, everybody. John Self. Welcome to our Friday morning question-answer session called Your Career Questions. We're delighted you're with us today. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we get started, I want to share with you a couple of thoughts I've been having this week, talking about, thinking about a lot of the questions I've been getting over the past couple of weeks. And so I want to share some information with you. I will say this, that one of the things that really fascinates me is why employee engagement is so low, why employers seem so apathetic about this low level of engagement, and why employees aren't using the lack of engagement with their colleagues as a brand differentiator. And so I just want to mention that in passing today. I think it's really, really important. You know, before we really get started, there was a Wall Street Journal story this morning that was pretty incredible. Frustrated with the politics and the fact that some of the policies they really advocated for and really wanted during the last election have just all but just kind of faded away. And this is a generation that is overly, really overwhelmingly committed to values, especially as they involve meaningful work and contributions to society. And so not only are the politicians missing out on this group of people, but because their values and interest in working in a just culture to make a meaningful contribution, this is a powerful combination of values and desires. We are not harnessing this power. And if, as companies, if you're struggling to hire the best people, one of the things you've got to pay attention to is you really need to pay attention not only to your hiring processes, which a lot of them are really terrible, well, let's use a scientific term, they suck, and they drive people away. And you also have to take care of the people that come to work for you. And the failure rate in recruiting is really pretty high, and it's really regrettable. And I imagine hopefully we'll get some questions on that this morning. But this is a pretty essential thing. You know, we've got to capture these groups of people and understand what motivates them, and then you leverage their motivation, their interest, with a just response, and to give them opportunities to serve customers in a way that it aligns with the customer's needs and the employee's position. So that's just something I wanted to mention today, and I hope that I hope it's something that you will take into account, both as an employee in differentiating your brand, and as a employer who's trying to differentiate your recruiting brand to hire the best people. So I think this morning we want to start taking some questions. Now, if you have questions, and we've already had some submitted online, if you have questions, you can drop it in the chat, and we've activated that now. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. One question came in that related to, I think it was our office hours presentation on Wednesday. And the question really involved the story that I told about an applicant who just had a terrible day. And his terrible day happened because he wasn't prepared for the interview. He misunderstood some of the points in a very poorly developed recruiter prospectus or recruiter job summary. He knew the recruiter, and so he thought mistakenly that gave him some advantages, and that he could go in and just be real powerful and wrap this up spick and span. Well, it didn't go well, and he misunderstood some things. And by mid-morning, the CEO was already hearing grumbling from some of his loyal followers who come in and, you wouldn't believe what that candidate said. You wouldn't believe the kind of people they're bringing in here. And the candidate made some honest mistakes that he shouldn't have made if he'd asked questions prior to the interview. So shame on the candidate, who I know. But the recruiter was very successful. He was well-known, a partner in a major industry firm. Also, though, people didn't know, they knew he was condescending, he was pretty arrogant, but they also didn't appreciate the fact of what a gossip he was. And as I pointed out, the worst thing that a recruiter that gossips is a recruiter who gossips who is a very savvy politician. And so the recruiter got really frustrated with this applicant. The CEO at lunch kind of dressed the recruiter down. Why do you bring people like this to us? I mean, we hire you because you're supposed to be the best. If you can't do any better than this, we'll find another firm. Well, search firm recruiters don't like to lose business, especially if they're vying for another step up in their firm, and they're looking for their own promotion, and they're looking to protect their own bonus and their own equity share. And so the recruiter wasn't thrilled when he got this. Well, at mid-afternoon, after some board members interviewed this guy, they were not very impressed. And they complained to the CEO, who then jumped on the recruiter a second time. The second time was the end of the road for this particular candidate, Matt. The recruiter was so angry that he basically, in the weeks and months that followed, started a little whispering campaign. We refer to it as death by 1,000 cuts. Well, he was late to the interview. Yes, he was, but there was a bad accident, and the police had shut down the freeway. He had allowed extra time, but the freeway was about, really messed up, and it was a very, very serious accident. So he was 30 minutes late to the interview. He explained, and that should have been the end of it, but the recruiter used that. And then he said, he wasn't himself. I wonder if he had been drinking. And he said that to a couple of people that he knew would pass that around because they liked that kind of nonsense. So he was a very good politician. This guy's the interest in this candidate from this firm and other firms just dropped like a rock. He got another job. It was a demotion of sorts. He took it somebody who knew him, that knew that he might have been having some difficulties in his life, quote unquote. He hired him at a lesser position, and the guy took him 4 or 5 years to get back to where he was that day. Now, the lesson learned here is ask questions. If you're even at the executive level, don't assume anything. Ask questions. if the prospectus or the job summary is not clear, crystal clear on an issue, ask those questions. You're entitled to do that. Don't assume anything. You'll end up in a sinkhole, and your career could really suffer a major setback. And if you offend the wrong recruiter, that can really be bad. So that's what the question was. The follow-up is, how common is this? Well, if it happens once, it's too common. But recruiters are like priests, or like policemen, or like lawyers, or like, everybody has bad days. Everybody develops bad habits. All priests, all policemen, all judges, all lawyers, all pharmaceutical executives are not greedy jerks, okay? And they're not vindictive people. But it does happen. And if you find somebody who is particularly convinced that they are the salvation for the executive search industry, and it wants to start a messaging campaign that can hurt your background, let me tell you, it can derail you significantly. So you can't take that stuff for granted. If you don't have a good feel that you're being fairly dealt with by the recruiter, if it's early in the process, withdraw. If it's later in the process, don't assume anything. Don't make any assumptions on answering questions. Go in and take the high ground, and then get out of you'll probably not make the cut, but get out of the search. Because what you don't want to do is, you don't want to offend a recruiter. You just don't want to do that. So pulling out on the day of presentation is a bad thing to do. And that really irritates recruiters. So don't do things that are where you're going to burn bridges. So that's the best advice I can give you there. Let's see. How do I get noticed by recruiters? We've been talking about, first of all, the vast majority of recruiters are ethical, honorable people. But like anything else, there are some influential people in the industry that are more interested in the transaction, their money, and their career than for what happens to the client or what happens to the candidate. So it's human nature. Just be self-aware, be observant of what's happening. How do you build relationships with recruiters? Well, first of all, when you lose their job or start looking for a job, calling a recruiter is a waste of your time unless you have a really tight, close relationship with that recruiter. Why? Don't call us, we'll call you. The implication is, we'll call you if we need you. If we're not talking to you, it's because we don't need you. Recruiters are very oriented toward the concept that you are inventory. And when they have an order for the inventory that you represent, then they're going to be all over you. But if you have worked overtime and built a relationship, don't really push it. Don't ever call a recruiter and say, help me, I need a job. That's the worst thing you can say. Makes you look very pathetic. So don't ever do that. But you can build relationships with recruiters. Now, keep in mind, more and more, a lot of organizations in healthcare and retail and other industries are doing a lot of their own recruiting. But with the new automation, they are able to do that online. So you're still seeing recruiters at the senior level, but their market share, the number of search positions that they're doing is declining, and there's been some consolidation in that industry because the business is shrinking. And I was looking at Korn Ferry, which is a global executive search firm that I believe came out of Pete Marwick Mitchell in Los Angeles years ago. And they now, I didn't even see, I had to look for the word recruiting. They are a talent acquisition, a talent consulting, an organizational development firm that does recruiting, I think is the best way to put it. So build relationships. Getting to know recruiters is not a bad thing, but don't invest too much time on that, because most of your jobs are going to come from people in the industry, not search guys, but people who are your colleagues or your superiors, who are going to hear about jobs that aren't posted, that are not public, and will say, hey, this organization's looking for somebody, and you really sound like you fit the bill. You need to apply for that job, or I'll make an introduction for you. So that's just something that you might want to do. Let's see. Okay, another question here. Looking over at my other monitor. Let's see. I submit resumes even for jobs I don't match up with, hoping they will see me and contact me for another role. Is this likely? If you're applying online, no, it's not likely. In fact, it's very unlikely, because a lot of that selection is being done by a recruiter or by a computer. And if it's not matching up with the job that you've applied for, you get ejected into the, to the ethers net or wherever that goes. The black hole, I think, is a very common reference. Don't apply for jobs that you don't qualify for. I mean, you're just going to you're going to damage your brand within that organization. And I would advise you don't apply jobs unless you're at least 85 to 90% in alignment with what they're looking for. Okay. It's a time-consuming process to apply online, especially if you're an executive or senior manager. So you don't want to waste your time applying for jobs that you know you're not going to get. And because the old way of how recruiting done has changed. It's increasingly automated. These initial decisions are increasingly made by computers, not humans. Now, the ironic thing is, if you're dealing with a search firm, it's still a pretty much a people process. But large corporations who get thousands of resumes each week for jobs, it's really not very helpful. Let's see. I got a comment from Marion. He says, "Search guy, I agree that networking needs to be the first line of approach for candidates. It's great to know executive search people and to be known by them and to have a relationship valuable." Marion, great comment. I think that's spot on. And again, I want to reemphasize, I spent 27 years in that industry on a global basis. And the most of the people I encountered were terrific people. But it's very a transactional business. And you may know that recruiter, but sometimes in a search, the person by your side is not necessarily on your side. The recruiter has to take care of his client. Another question said, how important is networking? Well, Mary, he just pointed out this is really, really important. As a matter of fact, it is the most important thing you can do to enhance your career, because increasingly more and more of these jobs are off the grid. How do you network? Well, if you were trying to meet recruiters, one of the things I noticed, I was a member of the American College of Healthcare Executives. I think, Maria, you are too as well. You're a fellow in the college, which is a real higher honor. I was just a mere member, but for more than 10 years, I taught the course on interviewing. And so I noticed that of course, my tuition was always paid for, but I noticed a lot of recruiter search firms that were not necessarily in the organization or didn't want to go in and pay the pretty steep enrollment fees. They would do what is called lobby survey. So if you're out between meetings or doing the coffee breaks, there's a good chance you can run into recruiters and just say, oh yes, you're so-and-so. You're John Self, aren't you? I've read of some of your stuff. I see your LinkedIn. I just wanted to say hello. Here's my card. If I can ever help you, please call me. And that's the operative word. In networking, it can't be about you. If you lost a job and you don't have a network, you're going to have to rely on the online submission. And hopefully get caught by a scanner looking at LinkedIn profiles. That's something else that's changing the face of recruiting. But that can, once you build a relationship, or once you get some identification, if you see them again, always go by and say, "Bill, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for I met you last year at ACHE. I saw you here. Just wanted to say hello. If there's anything I can do, please call me." And so that's kind of it. That's not an overnight process. You have to build a relationship. You have to build trust, not just with recruiters, but all members of your network. And again, I can't emphasize enough. I've been harping about this since the mid 1990s. Your network is your equity in your career. If you think it was hard finding a job 5 or 10 years ago, it's like having a root canal without xylocaine today. For every job that you apply for online, the odds are about 150 to 200 to 1 that you'll make it through to the end. Why would you want to have those odds? Build relationships with people who can help you. Okay. And you got to understand that at the core of networking is, how can I help you? It's like farming. You're cultivating a relationship. So, and you can't rush it. So if you don't have a network and you lose your job, you're in for a tough go. There are people that can help you. And there are ways that you can accelerate that in strategy dealing with online stuff, but it's still a lot harder than if you have a network. Second point on that is because networking is, people think more is better. Well, not necessarily. Robin Dunbar, who was a British archaeologist, historical archaeologist, and did some interesting work on mammals. And the work he did showed conclusively that mammals can only really manage relationships with about 135 to 200 people. The sweet spot seems to be 135 to 150. Why? And that they say, the more people you have in your network, the more unfocused you can be. So my advice is have a written career plan. The research is abundant there. People with written career plans tend to do better in their careers. And so have a written career plan, then build your network based on your plan. Be focused. Okay. You don't want to have a realtor in Seattle and a financial planner in Los Angeles. They're just trying to sell you stuff. Find people that you can have mutually beneficial relationships that align with your career goals and you align with their career goals. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. Let's see. Another one just came in. My LinkedIn profile includes my middle initial. My resume does not. Is that a problem? You want to be consistent. Why? Because sometimes on LinkedIn, if you don't put the name that's in the LinkedIn search, your headline, it won't bring you up, or it'll be buried someplace. So make it easy for recruiters. First of all, on your resume, put your active LinkedIn URL. So they can, once they get your resume, they can just click it and then get to your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile should be consistent in terms of your history and your accomplishments with your resume. But you can also add stuff in the LinkedIn profile that supports your resume. And with younger recruiters, and that does not include me, after 27 years of travel, after 40 years of travel, I hung it up. I just got sick and tired of the airlines. But a lot of the younger recruiters are in that millennial, and now you're seeing Gen Zs get into talent acquisition. They grew up looking at short videos. So make short videos about an accomplishment, a mini case study, things like this. That can help you get noticed. Now, keep in mind, they are now using scanners to go through profiles. And so you want to be sure that you're using some hashtags and using keywords that are, aligned with your industry. LinkedIn is making some more changes. I'm not a big fan to the open to work piece. Recruiters, I love it. Nor me. I love that. Good, great comment. Thank you very, very much for contributing on the live chat today. But you want to be sure that now they're using algorithms and they can scan thousands of profiles in a matter of minutes. So that means the pool is going to be wider. And so you want to be sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date and reflects all the changes. Now, I don't like the open to work thing, but you can go down into the profile and there's another setting that I forgot the setting now. Miriam, maybe you can help refresh. He just left the building. Let me go over here and see if I can find it real quick. But there's a setting that you can change, and I apologize. It just kind of missed me up here. It's a certain setting, and let's see. Let me get up on my other monitor. And of course, it never operates as fast as you want it to. I'll stay on a little bit longer today since we're having this kind of a kerfuffle with my profile and getting it up. Okay. Load, baby, load. Okay. Creator mode. Ta-ta. Turn on the creator mode. That'll help you get more. That'll help you get attracted. That'll help you attract the people that can help you. This open to work, Allstate, State Farm, every insurance company that's constantly looking for, agents, they're going to be recruiting you. If you're not into that, don't waste your time. But with the creator mode on, that is more beneficial. You need to read up on that. That's a good thing to say. So I apologize. I couldn't remember the term. Why is it best to mention names, not to mention names of people with whom you've worked. Well, it's a natural reaction to say, well, I worked with this person, or when I was at Memorial Hermann, I worked with Bill Young, or I worked with Ron Patterson. When you do that, you're basically expanding your reference list, and they're called secondary references. And I know Bill Young. So, matter of fact, Bill Young and I are having a conversation this afternoon. But if you know those people, the one thing recruiters will do, they won't violate your confidence, but they'll say, hey, you need to tell me a little bit about Roger. We were talking the other day, and he said you guys knew each other. I'm looking for some. Is Roger going to be a good fit for this? Is this a good thing for me to do? Good thing for, and it's really a recruiter taking care of his client, which is his first moral responsibility. And so when you mention names in interviews, be sure they're people that you not like and trust, and who know you and who will speak positively of you. I mean, it's a great way to introduce into the search ecosystem other people that may be well known, and they can give you credibility. But you need to be very careful that you are mentioning people that will be supportive and with whom you have an ongoing relationship. Mary said 100% on creator mode. So I thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It is a little bit of a function of when you hit a point. Let me put it like this: the gray hair and sometimes forgetting a term just happens, and it's not, and quite frankly, I'm not sure prevention would help me on that. So we hope that this information has been helpful today. We've got a few more minutes, so if you have any questions, drop them in. Mary, it'd be interesting to see if you have a comment on what you think a couple of best practices for candidates would be. Drop it in the chat. I appreciate hearing that. Going back, I did just kind of jump off the LinkedIn issue. Always use your LinkedIn in your contact information, and do not put the contact information in a header or footer. Terrible idea, because some scanners can't pick that up, and you'll get ejected and you won't know why. So, but be sure your email and your LinkedIn are active links in your contact information. And don't get too cute by half putting, we're going to balance it. We're going to put it on both sides of the header or both sides of the page. Just stack it up. That's why I call it a stack. Just stack it up and name the name that's you're going to use. That's also the name you use on your LinkedIn profile. That if you have other platforms that you use, the same name that you use. If you're an ACHE, you want to be sure all your name is always consistent. When I was in the news business, one of the papers I worked with, the requirement on the byline was they used your full name. So, at the Houston Post, I was John Self. At another paper I worked at, it was John G. Self. UPI, when they were still a major wire service, always used the full name. I had a colleague, a guy at school that was a year ahead of me, Steve Reed, great guy, good writer, really a good journalist. But at UPI, he was always Stephen R. Reed. So, so you want to be sure that your name, which is part of your brand, is consistent throughout the various points. Want to bring a couple of issues up. April 27th, we are having, that's a Saturday, there's a 3-hour career management boot camp that will be run. We have some guest speakers coming in that'll talk about everything from building a network for overseas work, if you want to become an expat, to how to make a career transition into a new company. So we've got those two areas. We may have one more speaker we're waiting to hear. We're going to cover all the basic stuff on resume, on interviewing skills, on more detail on recruiters, and strategies for managing your brand in an increasingly automated environment. So the other ways things that you can do to leverage your appeal. Again, go back to comments I made early on in this feed today, is that engagement is a serious problem. I mean, it has been this way for years. It got a little bit higher at one point, almost to 40%. But 33% means that 67% of the people are just not giving, their all. companies are paying 100% of the salary and they're getting 67% of the, or so they're getting 33% of the engagement. So this is a way for you to enhance your brand. Be engaged. Understand that, be upbeat, volunteer for stuff. Hit your numbers. You got to always perform. You've got to always, that's so important. You can have a flashy brand, but if you're not a good performer, nobody's going to want to touch you. But that's one way that you can stand out as an employee that people will want to hire. And so engagement is an opportunity right now. It is also an opportunity for companies. I did some research for a hospital that had a 17% turnover rate in their OR. And it was costing them, when you looked at what OR salaries were, and this was during a shortage period, if you looked at their OR salaries, and what it was costing them to replace it, and the overtime and the traveler nurses to fill those spots while they did the recruitment, it was costing them about $800,000 a year. And they couldn't believe it. And, when they did the math, they went, yeah, that's kind of accurate. But the problem is that's not, companies as a general rule, don't go to the board meetings and say, our turnover was 25% this month, because that's going to get the question, what does that cost us? And the answer is an arm and a freaking leg. So if you're a leader, engaging your people is a great way to enhance your brand and enhance the performance of your company. So hopefully that's something that you'll find useful. Now, if you have questions, you can always reach out to us at info@johngself.com. We also want to encourage you to become a member of our Your Career community. It's brand new. It's just getting started. Not very many people know about it yet, but it's a way to get access to career information and to meet with people who are in a position of either trying to advance their career or they're trying to accelerate their job search. So we're working on that. We do every Wednesday, we do office hours at 4 p.m. And then last Tuesday of each month, we do something called Lunch and Learn. Every Thursday morning at 7:30, we do a shorter version of Career Live, which we maybe focus on a couple of hot points in career management. And then Fridays, we do Your Career Community. Thanks, Mary, for your comments today. Let's see if we have anything else coming in. Thanks, Bill in Michigan, for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. Let's see who else, if anybody else, regular viewers. Let's see, Michelle, thank you very much for joining us. If you know people that are in the job market, encourage them to check in on our file. If you right now, the LinkedIn's, the live feeds are available to everyone. Eventually, office hours and Lunch and Learn will be members only, but the Career Live every Thursday will still be a free event, as will the question time. So really appreciate everybody joining us today. And I hope that this is good information, and that we can see you next week for Lunch and Learn, office hours, Your Career Live, and What Question Time.